Good morning. So today we're going to actually see what we are working on with regards to AX 2009 and AX 2012 with regards to these two releases, what we are doing with respect to the upgrade so that you could upgrade to the Dynamics 365 for operations. So we'll start off with AX 2009 and then I'll talk about the 2012 upgrade aspects as well. How many of you have attended the user group conference? I know Marco. Some of you. So if you had attended my session, the architecture aspects of what I'm going to be talking about is still the same because obviously the architecture didn't change from UG to now. So it's going to be still the same. But if you had seen the demo of the tool itself, we had done significant set of changes because we're close to the public preview in terms of where we are. So I'll walk through the tool aspects as well. For somebody who's seeing this for the first time, it's good because you're seeing the good version of the tool. Good. So from a 2009 standpoint, right, I'm calling it explicitly not as an upgrade, as a migration. Right? And there's a reason as why I'm calling it this way, as primarily because we're providing the tool sets, and from a 2009 standpoint, considering the amount of changes that has happened since 2009 to AX 2012, if you were to, plus AX 2012 to the new Dynamics AX, if you were to think about, we have gone through significant transformation of the product, both in terms of the data model, functionality, as well as the platform in terms of where we were, from the rich client platform to where we are today. So that in itself is one of the factors. So we're looking at customers who are currently running 2009 for them to actually think about this as an opportunity to go back to doing another round of fit gap analysis in comparing with what we have in the new Dynamics AX to really see if the features, in the absence of certain set of features that they had to go in and customize, do they really still need those customizations? If those customizations are not needed, you have an opportunity to go deprecate those customizations and then move forward with them. So we'll actually have a little bit of tooling opportunities with regards to moving the code based on the customizations that you see as customizations that you want to carry forward. But we don't want you to compromise on the data. So we're providing you with an ability for you to be able to migrate your data from 2009 to the new AX as part of the exercise with you moving to the new Dynamics AX. So that's the tooling that which you're going to be seeing. And that's why I'm calling this as a data migration as opposed to a data upgrade. Another reason as why I'm calling this migration, I'll explain that when we see what we support with the tooling out of the box. Right? So the target scenario is an ability for customers to be able to migrate from legacy versions. We're starting with AX 2009 and without doing a full upgrade. That basically means we don't want you to be carrying forward the whole set of transactions along with the configurations, the whole set of historical transactions if you were to, in a traditional way as how you would be doing an upgrade. So we want you to be migrating only selective set of information. We'll support certain things out of the box that obviously you can go in and extend as well. So what do we support certain things out of the box? So we support everything with regards to setup and parameters. So anything that is part of your application configuration we support. So that basically includes your parameters, the setup information, the what you do, the master data like customers, vendors, projects, etc. Opening balances, open transactions. Right? We also support you to be able to actually migrate the system configurations aspects of things. But the underlying framework, and you will actually see that in terms of what and how this tool is made to work. This is basically leveraging the data export import framework service to export information from AX 2009. So anything that you have as an entity representation in the new AX, you can extract the corresponding tables information from AX 2009. So if you have an entity representation in AX7, you can use the export import service to extract information from 2009 for all the tables that are part of that entity. That makes sense, right? So we support certain set of things out of the box, but you can actually go in and extend this for your customizations as well. So this should work seamlessly for the standard tables as well as the custom tables. From a process perspective, if we were to look at what we expect as a typical migration process, right? So this is not very specific to this tool. Any data migration exercise, you would be going through somewhat of a process like this. So where you would start with is you would analyze your source system, where you are with regards to and what data you want to be migrating. If there's any cleanup that you need to be doing from like archiving the ones that which you don't want to keep, purging the ones which you don't need anymore, or if there are any kind of issues because of any legacy reasons as what you've been through, you have an opportunity to go do some cleanup. Once you have done that, you have a good clean set of information that you want to actually export. You can use the tool to extract that information. And the tool actually creates what we call as a data package. I think you would have had a glimpse of that if you had seen this for the first time in the Christian session about, as part of the data management framework, what a data package is. So what the tool does is from AX 2009, based off of what you specified as something that you want to export, it exports that information into a data package, which you can provide as an input to the data management framework in AX7, and you can actually import. From that point onwards, the flow remains the same as the experience is what you have seen in the data management framework. So the first three boxes are predominantly the things that are related to the tool that what you would be doing from a 2009 perspective. Once you have your data in the staging, all aspects of what you are able to do today in that staging with regards to the information you're importing, those applies. That means you can transform, you can validate, you can do any kinds of custom validations that you would want to do with regards to those entities, push that information from staging to the target, and then you can validate the information in the target, which is nothing but the standard validations that you would do in terms of whether you got the right set of information or not. And this piece of information, in terms of once you have extracted, you can repeat this information without you actually having to go back to the source system. So you can continue to cleanse your data from the staging and continue to import till you actually perfect it, right? So this is typically the first time process if you were to, but will also support incremental transactions. So we don't anticipate you actually stopping using your legacy system, that is your AX 2009 in this case, so that we will support for every aspect of export that you're doing, will actually support incremental runs as well. So you can actually extract the delta and bring that into AX the same way as what you would have brought the first time. So it support both these patterns. At a very high level, what the architecture is so translate AX7 equal to Dynamics 365 for operations again, right? So you have your AX 2009 database. We'll actually give you a tool, and that's going to sit in AX 2009 system. All the tool is, it's a combination of two things. So one is it's a set of forms, which is basically a checklist that which you will actually see now. And it has the data export import framework service in the same way as how it's running in AX 2012. It'll run in AX 2009 as well. So that's the one that supports in terms of providing the export aspects of it based off of whatever you specify as a criteria for it to export. So once you've done the pre-processing, you can actually use the service to specify which information that you would want to export, and you can export that from your AX 2009 system. It uses the mapping definitions and exports them in a format as what you have specified as your export format, and it creates the data packages for all the entities that what you would want it to actually extract. At this point in time, you have a consumable artifact that which you can give as an input to your AX7 system. And you can import that using the data management framework. So very simple process if you were to think about. So that's kind of the goal in terms of what we are actually trying to do with this tool. So at a high level flow, that makes sense, right? So let's take a quick look at this thing. This screen should look familiar, right? So very simple, very old AX 2009, right? So what we have done is we have provided a migration checklist as part of the tool that you can actually access from the admin, where you have the other checklists. You now have a new migration checklist as well. The very first thing that which you would do is you would actually go through the compilation. For somebody who remembers AX 2009 still, this compile used to be the whole application compile, but here what you are doing really is you're just doing the data migration tool specific components compile. You're not doing the full application compile. And once you've done the compile and synchronize, you can actually go through the exercise in terms of what are the steps that you need to actually go in and do. So we'll walk through the tool's capabilities, but I'll also highlight where we are and what aspects of the product that we still don't have the support for as well, so that you can keep that in mind as you are trying to work through this. Right? The first step that what you would be doing in this is what we call as a migration company list. So this is where you specify which of your AX 2009 companies you want to actually migrate. So typically when you are doing a migration of this sort, whatever set of tables that you want to migrate, you would like to understand what are those tables and how many records that you have in the source system. So that's basically what you do, also along with telling the system that which companies you want to migrate. So let's say, for example, so you're trying to migrate. So this is basically a set of demo data that what we have in this instance, right? So if you're trying to migrate this thing, you can actually see the details. And when you do go see the details, what it will show you is it will show you for that company every single table and the corresponding set of records that are there in the source table. It will also highlight the fact that if you have customized any of those standard tables or if you have custom tables in those as well, and it will give you an indicator of that so you know whether it's a standard table or a custom table. So this is the first validation that which you could basically, information that you could use to validate if you have done the migration right and you got the same number of records to the target system as well once you have completed the migration. The system will support both the standard companies as well as the virtual companies. The implementation of the virtual companies is slightly different from the standard one because in the new AX, we don't have the concept of what we had as a virtual company anymore. So the implementation for that is slightly different. So once you have done the companies that which you want to migrate, you can actually go through a set of activities in the next series of steps. Those are basically you specifying how and what you want to migrate, right? So those are the next series of steps that what you would actually go through. So we'll start with the data conversion. So this is a concept that what we have introduced. Very standard concept with the migration, as the name suggests. So your source system may have data represented in one form, but as you migrate and then move them to the target, you want to transform the data into a different form. So as you export information from the source system, if you want to fix that at the root itself or the source itself, you have an ability to be able to define. So here what granularity that you define the data conversion is, you define the granularity at the level of an extended data type. So you define the conversion rules of the extended data type for every EDT that which you want to actually go in and adjust. You can define a conversion value. So here's an example where this was blank in my AX 2009 system. I want this to be exported as US so that when it comes into my staging in the AX7 side, that I don't need to actually go in and manually manipulate those records in the staging. So you're able to fix some of these things in the source system itself. So as part of any migration exercise that you go through, you would go through the tables, you would go through the fields, you would see what it needs to be and what is there in the source and what it needs to be in the target. Very standard process, But this helps you to actually define the conversion once you've completed the analysis of whichever ones that requires the data conversion. You could actually go in and define those. So this you're defining at the extended data type level. So that means any tables, fields that uses this extended data type, when we export, we'll apply this conversion rule and pick up the target values. So that's the behavior that you would expect. So once you've done this, we have a set of parameters. So this is, if you had a chance to look at the old version of the tool, this is where we have actually done significant set of changes. So the way as how this works is, right, so data entities as a concept is not there in your AX 2009 system. With this tool, what we have done is we have provided the data export import framework service, the Windows service that sits in your AX 2009 system. So it's able to perform the same functions at the export as what a data export import framework does. But it operates at the table level when it tries to export, and it maps to data entities on the target, which means data entities on the AX7 side. So you need to be able to import the definitions of those data entities. So you need to point where your AX7 system is, and that's what you're specifying as part of the parameters. You can also specify a default set of mappings if you were to, and we specify those aspects of it. So this is where you specify where your think of it as a development box, right? You can specify where your development box is and where you would want the packages to be generated. So a very basic set of information if you were to, and that's what you provide here. So we need an ability to be able to look at the target AX7 system of yours for it to be able to extract the metadata information, and the primary metadata that we are interested in is the data entities that is there in your AX7 system, so that we can bring that and you can map them to the corresponding tables in AX 2009, and the export import framework service will actually export those. So to get that metadata information, you need to specify those connection parameters. That's what you're doing here. The next couple of screens that what you will actually see are constructs that have fundamentally changed from AX 2009 to the new AX. So you need to specify a level of mapping with regards to those. So financial dimensions is the first one. So you all know the financial dimensions changed from 2009 to what used to be the fixed array set of fields is what it used to be, to a backing table based dimension model. So we go through that conversion first. So you specify which of those dimensions that you have in the system that you want to migrate. So once you specify that, we will actually convert everything from the old ways to the new way as part of the export process and the load process. We will actually do that. The same holds good for the inventory dimensions as well. So by company, you can actually specify which of those inventory dimensions that you want to migrate. Once you specify those, chart of accounts is a new construct that we have added. So chart of accounts was not a shared concept in AX 2009. So you used to define chart of accounts by company. With AX 2012 and hence in the new AX as well, we have an ability to be able to support shared chart of accounts. So you need to actually define that construct. So that's what you are actually doing here. We also introduced an entity called ledger in AX 2012, which was meant to carry the accounting definitions for a legal entity. And it is made up of chart of accounts, calendar, currency, and an exchange rate types, etc. So you need to specify the mappings for those for each of those legal entities that you want to migrate. What would be the ledger definition that you wanted to have? So this is where you can actually continue to use the same company specific chart of accounts. And then you can actually migrate into or the shared aspects of it. So if you look at the ledger, so you specify for each of those legal entities that you want to migrate, what is the ledger name that you want to use, what is the account structure, what is the chart of accounts that you want to use, and the calendar and the currency. So this makes up that ledger definition, which we would be able to use to create the ledger for every legal entity that you are migrating. So this is where I'd like to highlight for some things like this. So site is a concept that's changed from 2009 to 2012, and hence you would expect the same behavior in this thing. So some of those capabilities have not been added yet. So those will light up as we go. Retail is another area that we are working on now, right? So that's an aspect that has gone through a fundamental sort of shift between what was there in 2009 to the new AX. So you'll see the shift for that. That also means that holds true for the warehouse management aspects as well, right? So these are some of the things that I want you to keep in mind. So we're actually working on those aspects of things, and those will light up as well. But the behavior that you should expect to see is something similar as what I'm showing you with regards to the ledger concept. So we'll actually ask for the missing information if we couldn't default one for you as part of the migration process for that company. If we couldn't default one for you unambiguously, we'll ask for that information, but that experience will be somewhat similar to what you're seeing in the ledger. Right? Once you have gone through these set of things, then the next thing that you would do is entity list. So this is predominantly where I expect you as a partner working with the customer during their implementation for the migration to be spending time. This is where you would be spending significant amount of time. So we'll start with there are a lot of information in this form. So we'll start with the left-hand side. So this should be familiar. So we're actually starting with the module areas. And one of the reasons is why I wanted to start with this is, right, so typically as you approach the migration exercise in a customer, you don't need to think of this as an all or nothing. You can actually do them in certain chunks, and you can actually describe what the chunks is going to look like. Right? The unit of work is what you want to actually start with. So you could start with something like the customer aspects of things. You don't need to start with the whole thing. You could start with the ledger, finish the migration for that, and then you can start with the customer, finish all aspects of that, then you can go to the vendors. If you have different teams working on those, and they can actually work on those different elements as well. So that model is perfectly fine, right? So that's what you are actually looking into. So when you look at a particular area, so you actually see the setup configuration aspects of things. So when you select a particular area, let's say for example, if you go choose the configuration, you will actually see all versions of, all tables that are pertaining to the configuration aspects of things. The left-hand side tree navigation that you see, they're basically based off of the table classifications that what you've specified in the table group properties. That's what we use as. So if that is classified correctly, even for your customizations, those will show up under the right groups. So it's garbage in, garbage out. So just be mindful of that aspect of it in terms of what the source for that is, right? So once you have the particular area, you can actually see all the set of tables in here. So there's a couple of things that what you specify here. For every source table that you have, you can also see the target entity as the next column. So that information is the one that what we have got. We have shipped certain set of mappings out of the box for each of these tables. But for your custom ones, if you want to, you have an ability to be able to do. So the first thing that you can do is for any specific set of tables that you want to migrate, you would activate that for the migration set of things. And once you do that, the system will actually go do an analysis in terms of for that company, how many records that you have for that table. So if you look at the configuration, you can actually see the corresponding source tables and the target entity aspects of things. I've lost the scroll bar again. All right, so that is something I need to go work on. But what I was going to show you was these set of tables have to be loaded in the target in a particular sequence. And that is the most painful exercise with the migration, because you are expected to know the data model internals for you to be able to. So we actually have solved this to an extent with the data packages and the data entities and the relationships between those in a way as how these needs to be sequenced. You have an ability to import the package definition from your new AX system. That's what we have in that import package. So you have an ability to be able to import the package. So if you have defined your package with the right set of sequence, you can import them. You can use the standard packages where we have defined the sequences, and you can extend those based off of your extensions. Those are customizations that you plan to carry forward. You can bring that definition, and when you import it, it'll automatically take those sequences for you. And hence, the underlying tables, those are mapped with the source system, that is your AX 2009. They will be imported in that same sequence. So that is a good feature that which will help you quite a bit as you are actually going through the migration. But once you have identified which set of tables that you want to migrate, you can actually define what we call as a migration group, and that for that migration group you can actually export that information once as many times as you would want, if you would want. So when I look at what does that migration group really means, so from the entity list itself, for the ones that are selected, there's an option called create a migration group. So you could select that directly. If not, in this particular case, you can come in here and then define a new migration group. You can specify the company that you would want. You can go select the list of entities that which you want this to be migrated. I'll use this one. Any one of those. Right? So you can basically select that. This aspect of it is quite important. So what we allow you to do is, right, so when you select a particular table, what we do from an export perspective is to do select star from that table. So we basically get everything. But when we do the select star for every EDT that what you are using as part of those fields, we'll apply the conversion rules if you've defined conversion rules based on the data conversion rules, and we'll convert the data and then we'll create the export file and then construct the package for it. But if you want to filter certain set of records, you want to only select certain columns but not all fields, and those kinds of stuff as a requirement that you have, you can use a source query. For that particular table, you can use a source query. Here you can actually provide a standard ANSI SQL using that table, and we'll actually use that for the export instead of using the standard select, which would select all fields, all records that are there in that table. You can actually go see the field mappings in terms of this. Here again, tied to this individual set of field mappings, you have an ability to be able to create the conversion. So here again, you can actually go do this. But this conversion is applicable for this instance of the migration, not to the entire places where the EDT is applied. Right? So I want to use, because of the way as how EDTs are common, or rather generic, you want to differentiate the export options for each of those types of exports, then you can actually use this feature. So once you select those, then you can actually, so here again we have added the import package option. So what this basically means is whatever that you have as the package definition on your new AX system, you can import that, and for all entities and the underlying tables tied to those entities, we'll automatically do the mapping, automatically do the sequencing, and we'll create a migration group for you. So that's what this import package option really means. So once you have done this, you can do an export for your migration group. So this is really the third box in that migration process, if you remember the migration process that I walked through. So you can define, so this is an instance of export that you're doing. So consider this is your first. The Delta run is not enabled right now, primarily because we're doing this for the first time for this migration group. Here again, you can specify the period at which you want this information to be migrated. And you can specify you want this to be run on the client or you want this to be run on the batch. So you can specify that aspect as well. And you have an ability to override where you want this package to be created. It defaults from the parameters, but you can override them here and you can create them as a data package. So that's primarily what you do. You can actually see the execution history and the details of it. So all I did was only the customer group, and it had 8 records in it. And it has exported that information. There wasn't anything that which it find as a mismatch. And you can actually go see. So that was the package that we just created. So this artifact is something that you can directly import into AX7, and it'll automatically look at the package definition. In this case, the package definition clearly says that it has only one entity, and it basically uses this information to say what it needs to do. And it also has a manifest file, the same way as what you would have seen in the data packages. It constructs that on your 2009 system that you can take this and then use them as an input. From that point onwards, the flow remains the same. You guys are with me so far? Right? So that's in a nutshell in terms of what the tool. There's obviously tons of features in this that I have not talked through specifically on the entity list form. That is the real place where you would actually be going through the effort of determining what to migrate, how to migrate, what aspects of it that you want to map it to, what conversions you need to apply, all of those that you do in that entity list form. Right? So you enable them, you define all the properties, validate it, then you go through the actual run. Right? And you can repeat this as many times as you would want. Good? So where are we with this tool? So we're pretty close in terms of addressing the bug fixes that we had gone through. So we've gone through a pilot exercise with a couple of customers' databases by using this tool to migrate their databases. And we have found a significant set of issues with those, and we have addressed those issues, and we're ready to actually go in and provide a public preview of this. You will see that light up towards this month so that we can actually start using this tool as well.